Hey there, friends. My name is Jim, and today I had the unique opportunity of interviewing my friend Max from Ukraine. So I'd like to get into that, but first I wanted to cover a couple of the updates that happened over the last 12 hours to do with Ukraine, a bit of a preface. So, the Nord Stream 2 project was canceled by Germany. It was a move that was a little bit unexpected, but like I was saying last night in my video, Ukraine has been officially invaded by Russia. Now, Russia will say that they are invading independent regions that are in opposition to the Ukrainian government, places that have considered themselves independent. While that is apparently true, Ukraine still considers that part of its sovereign territory in the same way that China considers Taiwan part of its sovereign territory. So, Russia doing a peacekeeping mission inside of this region is considered to all other partners invading Ukraine. So, for that, Germany has actually stepped forward and decided to cancel its deal with Russia that it would create a oil pipeline called Nord Stream 2 from Germany underground to Russia so that they could trade gas back and forth without having to worry about trading with places like Saudi Arabia and dealing with the US dollar. It would basically cut us out of the middleman. A bit of an interesting statement here by this gentleman, Mike Kavrekidis, hashtag Russia and hashtag Azerbaijan. The major energy suppliers of Europe are signing an alliance treaty. Will you just wait to be blackmailed by semi-dictators? The proposed hashtag East Mediterranean gas pipeline from Israel, Cyprus, Greece becomes extremely important and need to be supported. At Secretary Blinken. So, because the Nord Stream has been shut down, several individuals in Israel, Cyprus, and Greece are proposing an Eastern Mediterranean pipeline, which would be very beneficial to Israel. Just figured I'd point that out. On top of that, here's Dmitry Medvedev. I always have a problem with him. Dmitry Medvedev. He is a Russian government official, and he is talking here about German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has issued an order to halt the process of certifying the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Well, welcome to the brave new world where Europeans are very soon going to be paying $2 for 1 cubic meter of natural gas. It is possible that due to this kind of movement, Europe is going to have some sort of rolling blackouts. I mean, this is similar to what happened to the U.S. when Biden got in office. Prior to Biden getting in office, there was a oil pipeline plan called the Keystone XL pipeline. When Biden got into office, he decided to scrap that because it ran through native lands and there was some concern about environmental damage. Because of that, all of the groups, capital venturist groups, and other type of investment groups decided that the signal towards oil was negative and to not invest in other oil projects because clearly Biden was just going to scrap them. Now, that leads the entire market against oil and pushes the prices up. This is going to have a similar effect to shutting down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Just because it hasn't been pumping oil yet doesn't mean that it doesn't have an effect on the world oil markets. This is going to bump up the price of oil. And Jen Psaki's response, the United States press secretary, POTUS made it clear that if Russia invaded Ukraine, we would act with Germany to ensure Nord Stream 2 does not move forward. We have been in close consultations with Germany overnight and welcome their announcement. We will be following up with our own measures today. And this got me thinking, because I remember a few days ago, there was a bit of an announcement where Biden was talking about Nord Stream 2 and spoke as if he had some sort of authority over the EU. Let's take a look at that and just a bit of interesting information before I get into the interview. This was February 7th, and let's see what Biden had to say about Nord Stream 2 and where his, well,
here. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
And I just thought I'd highlight that because it's another example of the U.S. using its geopolitical... This wasn't Germany. This wasn't Germany just going, you know what, we're going to stand up against this. The Germany was going, we're probably going to remain neutral because we really, really, really need that gas. And the U.S. going, hey, Merkel, let me twist your tits real quick. And she said, okay, I will stop the Nord Stream, just stop twisting my nipples. Anyways, Without further ado, I'll show you a little bit of my interview I had with a Ukrainian person because I personally was curious about what the people on the ground felt about this. For our end in the United States, we hear nothing but constant rah 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 as if Ukrainians are ready to fight the war. And then from Russia's side, they say, no, 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 nobody wants to fight this war. What's going on? So I was interested in what an actual Ukrainian citizen had to say. So I called up my buddy Max here, and here you have it. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. I just had my friend Max here. I reached out to a couple of Ukrainian friends, and he was willing to come in and tell us a little bit about how the situation is on the ground in Ukraine. So, Max, can you tell us where you're from?
Hello everyone. I live to northeast to Kiev, about 60 miles from the Russian border.
Okay, and from what you were telling me before, you were mentioning that people in your general area aren't completely worrying about war inevitably breaking out. How would you say the average Ukrainian is insofar as panic buying and things like that? Are people rushing out to the stores to just buy whatever they can, buying beans and rice and all that kind of stuff?
I've basically been to a store about 30 minutes ago, and there is no panic buying. The last time there was panic buying was back in 2014, when no one knew if Russia will grab more Ukrainian territories after Crimea and so on, but it's no longer 2014, and after 8 years, people kind of got used to this stress. I mean, they are kind of worrying about the possible full-scale invasion, but the morale is high, and there is no one like panic buying some bread or, I don't know, cans, and of course, like, people bear in mind that Putin is unpredictable, because while the West mostly uses logic, and they're just more reasonable in terms of diplomacy and other stuff. However, Putin himself, let's say, he has own view, and it's nothing like the West. He just wants to restore USSR, but
Right.
without the communism or socialism part. Right now, as I said before, Ukrainians are not panicking.
Sure.
Moreover, I've seen a post maybe 10 minutes ago, like, there are a lot of volunteers at the military recruitment center, so whatever it's called, and let's say we are ready for divorce, and but at the same time, our morale is high. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's understandable because from the West version of what our government and mostly our news media would like us to believe, we've been getting a lot of news that shows things like old ladies getting prepared, like, oh, this old lady just joined the service, so that if when war breaks out, there's all these, people, just random individuals from everyday life joining up with guns because they want to protect Ukraine from Russia. So, I wasn't sure if it was more that Ukrainians would really like say Putin were to go all out and just first off start with the Donbas region, take Luhansk and Donetsk, and consider that under his jurisdiction. Now, if he were to go that far, would the average Ukrainian really care that much about that, or would it just be kind of a change from one big corrupt jurisdiction to a different corrupt jurisdiction? Would that actually change your lives? Is that something that you guys are actually worrying about, or if that were to take place, would it be more of a, you know, one old regime to another? Would it be that big of a difference practically?
It is a big deal. Let's say this way. Ukrainian mentality and Russian one is nothing alike, simply because while average Russian isn't a big fan of protests for different reasons, because oh, we are Russian, we are so helpless, like if we go, we'll get in jail and so on. But in case of Ukrainian, uh, we do have protests like regularly.
Okay,
But
so they don't crush down on dissent as much in Ukraine versus the Russian way of doing things.
yeah, yeah. Um, and um, right now, after the yesterday's Putin's speech, I
Right.
would say even those people who were slightly pro-Russian in Ukraine, they were simply um, mm, disturbed by his message, and I'd say they start to lean towards pro-Ukrainian side,
Okay, that
and
makes sense.
about 2 hours ago, Putin made uh, like um, he said that Ukraine should completely demilitarize and abandon any plan to join NATO.
Okay,
Um,
what do you
but
guys think about that?
but uh, the more claims like this he makes, the more us Ukrainians just want to join NATO.
That is
Um,
understandable.
yes, for example, in 2013, about 37% of Ukrainians, if I recall correctly, were in favor of joining NATO. Currently, it's somewhere about 67,
Oh,
68. So, um,
yeah, him increasing the
yeah.
tensions in the region have really pushed people more towards where they would be more neutral, possibly. He's made them pick a side, and obviously their side is preferring their own sovereignty away from his lead, I would assume.
Yeah, because no one wants to uh, live in another Crimea,
Okay.
um, or simply be occupied.
Is that true for the people in Luhansk and Donetsk? Because I wasn't sure from what the parties that I saw last night, I wasn't sure how much of that was propaganda versus how much of that are actually people who are welcoming. I mean, I guess they're welcoming independence from Ukraine as well, not necessarily Russia to just come in and take over. But it looks like that's what would happen. Do you think the people living there are pro being taken over by Russia, or do you think it's all just a propaganda thing for him to try and get a foothold in further in Ukraine?
Um, uh, the people in Donbass who are pro-Russian, uh, I would say they would like to join Russia because they want to have Russian pensions,
Okay.
um, passports.
It's not just about being their own independent place, it's actually about joining back into Russia for them.
Yeah, they joining a so-called Russian world.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I guess unfortunately, because in this day and age, you're either under the sphere of influence of China, the sphere of influence of Russia, or the sphere of influence of the United States. Out of those three, obviously I'm more pro United States because I live here, but I can understand how that would be maybe a devil's bargain for people who are more on the fringes because I could understand how some people who maybe weren't getting their from what I understand, Ukraine is a corrupt nation, but not quite as corrupt as Russia. But then you get into asking, well, how corrupt is the West really? Maybe we're not getting all the information about that. Are you? So you, I'm assuming, where do you live in Ukraine, if you don't mind me asking? Like what general region?
Um, Northeast to Kiev.
Okay, okay, cool. So you're a little bit further away from the active fight. You wouldn't have to worry about your lights getting shut off in case of like a attack or something.
Well, I do live about 50 to 60 miles from the Russian border,
Oof.
so
Okay, well, color me wrong then. Actually, I would be a little bit worried if I was you. Your camera went off, but that's fine.
mm,
Oh, there you go.
yeah.
Yeah. So if there were to be like if there were to be an attack, you would probably be the first one to hear something about it, I guess. Insofar as apart from the people who are directly there.
Yeah. Uh,
If
I I check on the news about every 10 minutes or so,
yeah.
and
I'm
yeah,
sorry. For some reason, I thought northwest when you said northeast. My brain turned off. But yeah, no, you would be right in the midst of it. That's unfortunate. Would so as far as you go, would you? I'm assuming you would prefer to have an independent Ukraine, or at least a Ukraine under the sphere of influence of the West versus under the Putin sphere of influence, considering the freedoms that you laid out earlier, the being able to protest and stuff. I mean, then again, you can only protest against. I mean, is the government? If you were to protest against the Ukrainian government, the Zelensky government, versus protesting against Putin, if Russia were to take over, I'm assuming you could much more openly protest against the Zelensky regime than Putin.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
For example, like in Russia, if you are to protest against Putin, even if it's a one-man protest, and if you are a student in university, you may just as well um, be expelled or having your scholarship revoked. And of course, here it's not the case, and um,
So in Ukraine, the governments don't control, like the regime doesn't have ultimate control in the same kind of corporate, corporate private public merger that Russia has, where Russia kind of has the last say in whatever happens there.
yes, and protesting in in general for us Ukrainians, it's like a tradition.
Okay.
And let's say mm, they are not futile in many cases. Of course, Maidan is a prime example, and there are other smaller protests from time to time, like to fire some minister or
Yeah, all the stuff that happened in 2014. Obviously, there was active. I mean, well, then I guess I would ask how much of that do you think was influenced by the West, and how much of it do you think was like natural natural occurrence? Because when I see when I see on the other side of the planet our news say that a group of people, protesters, whoever, rallied up against the current regime, my first thought is always to go like, well, is that planned by the CIA or something, or is that actually naturally occurring in that region? So it's then every time I see a Ukrainian uprising or something against either side, it makes me think, well, who am I listening to? So that's why I'd prefer to talk to somebody like you who can tell me what the people really want there.
So back in 2014, I used to live in Kiev.
Mhm.
I haven't been to Maidan myself because I was 14 years old,
Right. Yeah. I was pretty young.
and my parents were concerned about my safety and so on. So um, Maidan started in 2013 with a group of regular pro-European students, just a bunch, maybe 100 or less. Uh, they were protesting against Yanukovych uh, n- not, I mean, abandoning plans for European Union integration. At some points, that protest was about to end because simply it didn't have much effect. But one night, the police has beat those students up, and the next day, the parents of those students joined the protest, and it became not just pro-European Union integration protest, but also anti-Yanukovych,
Gotcha.
because he was also pro-Russian, and so when people say it's like a CIA,
Right.
uh, I don't think so.
Yeah, you see the actual uprising of the people there. Well, it's good to know because from my side of the planet, what people see when they think about the Ukraine versus Russia is we usually don't think about the intricacies of what it really means to separate from the USSR, the whole breakup of what happened back there and the history that they have and you guys have between each other. Necessarily, there's going to be a lot of really fine details that get lost in translation between us. So it's interesting to know to when something big like this could blow up from something that we weren't even paying attention to a little bit. Oh, here in the West, we were paying attention to the whole Afghanistan thing and then Taiwan, and for some reason, whenever there's about to be some sort of big financial hiccup, all of a sudden we need to have war with Russia, war with Ukraine, war with Putin. But this seems like something that was actually more naturally occurring, something that would have happened regardless of the geopolitical issues in the rest of the world, considering that eventually the whole ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine with Crimea and all that had to come to a head. So, do you think that would have? My question, I guess, is: do you think if we weren't dealing with coronavirus, if we weren't dealing with all the collapse from spending this massive amount of money that we didn't have and printing it out, and Afghanistan, all those different things occurring, if the government didn't of the West, the U.S. government didn't need this as a distraction right now, do you think it would have happened regardless, or do you think maybe everything would have stayed kind of simmering, but not necessarily into this big invasion of Donbass? Because from my point of view, I see basically Biden, Trump was fine with Russia doing whatever, and Biden just continually having to poke the bear about NATO and Ukraine and all this. Maybe there's something going on in Europe that I'm not paying attention to, but from my point of view, that's what I see. What do you think?
Considering Trump, as far as I remember, even during his presidency, we would receive those javelins, like anti-tank weaponry, whatever.
Right.
So
He was,
Biden
yeah,
wasn't the first at this point.
that's true.
Would the invasion happen regardless? I think yes, because Russia just want to spread back to its former glory, and increase its sphere of influence. Well, so suggest dreams and uh,
Yeah, I
even
remember hearing speeches from him about how he had, his dream was re-expanding the USSR. He was a former KGB guy, so I know that was his. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was always under the impression that that was somewhat a bit of an exaggeration. But again, I hadn't looked into it enough up until now, and now I realize that apparently he is just as much of a totalitarian expansionist as Xi Jinping is, or anybody else apparently.
I mean, he started this game a long time ago. I mean, there's Georgia,
Right.
there is Transnistria. Well, it was during Yeltsin presidency, but whatever. Uh, and so those plans uh, existed always, and even in case of Kazakhstan, it's partly applicable to. Um, well, I think if USSR failed with Afghanistan and other things, I think that Russia has less chances to success, especially since current Ukraine has better army than Afghanistan rebels back in 80s.
Fair point. Yeah, yeah. I think Putin may be biting off a little more than he can chew. One other thing I was curious about, because I just heard this earlier, Germany apparently is saying that they will no longer be continuing with the Nord Stream 2 platform, moving the oil from Germany into Russia, which I obviously was a really, really big uh, chess piece on this board. Do you think that's going to have any effect on his expansion into Ukraine? Do you think that might check him a little bit? Maybe he'll think twice, because I don't think he expected to have Germany. I thought Germany was going to cuck out to Russia. I thought they'd be like, whatever Russia wants to do, we're neutral, But apparently they're actually taking a stance. Do you think that'll have him thinking twice about moving further?
I was also surprised that Germany apparently has a pair of balls.
Right.
But at the same time, I think Putin would predict that this would happen, and his plans would stay intact anyway.
Yeah, he probably had a contingency for that. Well, Max, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Do you have anything you want to shout out? Any Twitter account or anything you want to have people go look at in my tiny, tiny channel if anybody watches this video?
I just want to say that thank you for your support.
No problem.
And we will not surrender. We will come on top and outlive both Putin and his regime.
That's what I like to hear. I hope we'll keep in touch, and if anything, well, I'm sure something will change. If something big happens, I hope I can keep in touch with you, and maybe we'll talk again soon.
Sure, anytime.
All right. Thank you so much, Max. You have a great night.
Thank you too.
Right. Bye. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found that a little bit interesting, and maybe it'll give you a little bit of a perspective on where we are going with the Ukrainian invasion. If you like this video, please subscribe below, hit the bell icon. Please comment below, let me know what you thought. Where do you think this whole invasion, incursion, Ukrainian sovereignty, push for new global order is going? Let me know. And copy the link, send it to your friends. You guys have a great night.